You're watching A News. I'm Leila Masimova. Here's the top stories for today. Trump tariffs goes through with measures introduced by the US expected to impact global trade. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen revealed that EU is finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to the US tariffs. The death toll is continuing to rise after the earthquake in Myanmar. There are no fears that disease could spread. US President Donald Trump's major announcement on reciprocal tariffs is expected to impact global trade. Yesterday, he declared the 2nd of April American Liberation Day and announced reciprocal tax hikes on 180 countries in order to boost production at home. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Obi Shabandar, has more.
If they charge us, we charge them back. That is how President Trump on Wednesday outlined his new tariff plan to safeguard American jobs as he proclaimed a, quote, Day of American Liberation and announced sweeping new reciprocal tariffs that will include a 10% tariff on all imports from all countries and a 25% tariff levied on all cars imported into the United States. China has been slapped with a new 34% tariff that goes on top of the existing 20%. So total U.S. tariffs on goods produced in China have now amounted to 54%. Interestingly enough, no new tariffs were imposed on Canada or Mexico. President Trump made the announcement with his cabinet, senior lawmakers, and American auto workers in the audience in the White House's Rose Garden. The president said that the day would be, quote, forever remembered as a day that American industry was reborn and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. In a chart published by the White House, the U.S. is charging about half of the tariffs on countries that have placed tariffs of their own on the United States. That will include value-added taxes on American-produced goods. For example, Vietnam has a 90% tariff on American agricultural products. As a result, the U.S. has now placed a reciprocal 46% tariff, or about half, on Vietnamese products. Trump added that these tariffs are necessary, as he believes that the U.S. has been, quote, looted and plundered by nations near and far, friend and foe alike, due to the White House describing as being unfair trade practices. The president stressed that for years, other nations have created trade barriers that have decimated various American industries and stolen industrial intellectual property from the United States. The tariffs on foreign-produced cars will be especially impactful. Trump paused his speech and brought to the podium a Detroit auto worker who praised Trump's tariff plan and said that he, alongside other workers, believed that these tariffs were necessary to bring back factories that have had to shut down. Trump highlighted how countries like Japan, South Korea, and Germany have placed significantly higher tariffs to protect their own products and their auto manufacturers, while ensuring that American car companies were unable to enter their markets. Likewise, American farmers have also been dealt an unfair hand, according to Trump, due to high tariffs placed by countries that in turn depend on the U.S. market to export much of their dairy and beef products. The baseline tariff rate of 10% will go into effect on April 5th, while additional reciprocal tariffs will go into effect on April 9th. The U.S. president believes that the tariffs will bring in a windfall of revenue to the federal treasury and invigorate American industries, including car manufacturers that have for years faced steep decline. I'm Ube Shabander, A News, Washington, D.C.
Some Americans are worried about the impact on everyday essential items after President Donald Trump has announced a new set of tariffs that are shaking up global trade. He's imposing a 10% baseline tax hike on all countries that are sending goods to the U.S.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. US President Donald Trump has unveiled a list of nearly 200 countries which will face new tax duties, with about 60 labelled as worst offenders. Trump says the baseline 10% tariffs are reciprocal tax hikes and claims these nations impose unfair trade barriers on US goods or act against American economic interests. These will take effect after midnight on Saturday, while the higher rates will be starting next Wednesday. The announcement has already raised fears of higher consumer prices. In Washington, D.C., people are concerned about the impact on everyday goods.
It'll be affected big. You see it in the market. You see the groceries are going up. The farmers are catching it. He come and flip the whole system around.
Yeah, I mean, avocados from Mexico is definitely a big one that I think about. I know some of our citrus too are grown internationally as well. Those are two of the big ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But still know that that's going to have an impact on grocery budgets.
It's still really concerning. I'm not sure. I'm not really feeling it at the moment, but when they do, if they do, right. It's gonna be concerning. Things are already rising. There's already inflation and all that kind of stuff. So I don't really want there to be other price hikes. It already kind of sucks to with the amount of income that I make to have to deal with that.
From today, all foreign-made automobiles will be charged a 25% tariff. Chinese imports will face a 54% tax, an increase from previous rates, while the European Union and Japan will see tariffs of 20% and 24% respectively. While Canada and Mexico are absent from the new tariffs, existing trade measures tied to border security and fentanyl remain in place. These sweeping tax increases mark a sharp reversal from decades of trade liberalisation and are likely to trigger retaliatory measures from US trading partners. As these duties take effect, consumers and businesses alike are bracing for the economic impact.
The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has condemned US President Donald Trump's universal tariffs as a severe blow to the global economy. She said the European Union is ready to take countermeasures if negotiations fail. The EU is finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to Trump's tax hikes on steel. The European Commission President, however, did not provide any details on future EU measures. Von der Leyen also said that the EU is preparing additional measures to protect its interests and businesses if talks with Washington do not yield positive results.
I deeply regret this choice.
European Union defense ministers are gathering for an informal meeting in Warsaw, Poland. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov and NATO's Deputy Secretary General Radmila Shekerinska are participating. They will all be discussing an initiative by the EU's Vice President Kaja Kallas to boost military assistance to Ukraine. The ministers are expected to lay the groundwork for the next EU Foreign Affairs Council meeting on security issues, scheduled for the 14th of April. With the Warsaw Defence Summit underway, we're joined live by Ross Cullen from Brussels to discuss the event. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Cullen. The past few months have seen countless meetings and congregations dedicated to the subject of Ukraine. Today, NATO foreign ministers are set to meet in Brussels. Additionally, the Warsaw EU Defence Summit is underway. Will this event be any different?
Yeah, hi Leila. NATO defence ministers meeting here in Brussels. Foreign ministers are going to be gathering, including the United States Foreign Minister, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, on his first trip to Brussels since he was confirmed in the post in the United States. Lots of questions for Mr. Rubio from his colleagues here, other NATO foreign ministers here in the NATO headquarters in Brussels. One EU diplomat did say that we will have questions for Marco Rubio. I'm sure that he will have messages for us as well. They'll be wanting to get more of an idea about the US overall position in terms of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and we can come on to that perhaps in just a minute, Layla. They will also want to understand this possibility the United States might move some weapon systems out of Europe, and also the suggestion that something else that Washington is considering as well is the United States might hand over the role of supreme allied commander in Europe. Now, since the formation of NATO, that role has always been performed by a member of the US military, but it's a sign that the US is considering reducing its influence in Europe when it comes to defence by considering these possibilities. So there'll be more questions from NATO foreign ministers here for Mr. Rubio. Now, Matthew Whitaker, it's also going to be his first official meeting. He's the new United States ambassador to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and he has said that, quote, under President Trump's leadership, NATO will be stronger and more effective than ever before. I can't believe that a robust NATO can continue to serve as a bedrock of peace and prosperity, but NATO's vitality rests on every ally paying their fair share. And in his official statement, he did commit to US upholding Article 5 of the NATO treaty. An attack on one is an attack on all. There have been some suggestions that the United States government might not honour that if that were to happen, but for the moment, no overall change to US policy when it comes to Article 5 of the NATO treaty.
US officials have recently opined that a peace or ceasefire deal in Ukraine is unlikely to occur anytime soon. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Layla, you might remember President Trump originally said that it would take him only 24 hours to end the war in Ukraine. Well, we've long since surpassed 24 hours, and then the timeline from Washington was pushed out to a few months. That's also been surpassed as well. There's a growing realization in Washington that this is perhaps more complex to try to understand how there can be a temporary ceasefire that leads to a lasting ceasefire that leads to a permanent peace agreement. There'll be questions as well from other NATO foreign ministers of their colleagues from the UK and France, because Britain and France have been the two leading advocates of this so-called coalition of the willing, countries that would be happy to put boots on the ground, a deployment of Western troops inside Ukraine at the invitation of Ukraine after any eventual peace agreement is signed. Well, there are military representatives from London and Paris in Ukraine right now, and so there is likely to be an update from London and Paris, from the UK and the French foreign ministers here in NATO to their colleagues about how the UK and France see developments, because those two countries are trying to maintain their momentum in terms of their support for Ukraine, despite perhaps if there is any slowdown, if there are any obstacles in the United States' approach of engaging with Russia and also engaging with Ukraine, often in Saudi Arabia. Despite that, the United Kingdom and France are determined to continue on their path, their chosen route, which is to try to support Ukraine militarily, financially, throughout all of these negotiations. Make sure the support keeps going. Make sure that the military material deliveries and supplies keep flowing, and also have action on the ground, as we see with these representatives meeting the Ukrainian armed forces counterparts today in Ukraine. So lots for the NATO foreign ministers to discuss here in Brussels.
Thank you for sharing your insights. Hungary says it's withdrawing from the International Criminal Court shortly after Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived on a 4-day state visit. The ICC issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu over allegations of war crimes in Gaza. However, Tel Aviv rejects the accusations, saying they are politically motivated and fueled by the anti-Semitism. Prime Minister Viktor Orban has invited his Israeli counterpart to Budapest in November, a day after the ICC issued its arrest warrant. The death toll is continuing to rise after the last week's earthquake in Myanmar. Nearly 3,000 people have lost their lives and over 4,600 are left injured. The Myanmar junta is declared a ceasefire from April 2nd to 22nd to show sympathy for earthquake victims and support rescue efforts.
Finding anyone alive has become more challenging in the debris after the earthquake that struck Myanmar and neighbouring Thailand. The death toll has now risen to nearly 3,000. 4,000 people were injured and 373 are still missing. This was according to the latest data shared by the local media stations. This rescuer in Mandalay says the conditions of searching or even finding some life has become testing.
There is zero possibility of finding survivors. It is the 5th or 6th day after the earthquake and the weather is extremely hot. So it is not possible for people to stay alive in this situation. We have only recovered bodies so far.
However, officials haven't lost all hope in Bangkok.
Hope, but frankly, hope gets a little bit slimmer every day, each day pass, But I think today our staff got phone call from Myanmar that they just found a survivor. How old? Just one survivor, and it happened at the same time. So it happened there, it can so happens here too. Yeah.
Beijing has sent the first batch of $13.9 million worth of emergency supplies, including tents, blankets and first aid kits to Myanmar. The United States has also pledged $2 million worth in aid, while Russia has set up a mobile hospital in Mandalay. India deployed a search and rescue team, medical professionals and aircraft carrying essential items. The European Union has launched a humanitarian air bridge operation, sending 80 tons of supplies, including child protection kits and health materials for the country, to be distributed by UNICEF and local partners. The United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, says the number of injured or deceased infants is still unknown. There are now also fears that diseases could spread.
Now, we've seen the official figures in terms of the death toll. We think it's very likely that there are hundreds of children that are among the dead. We believe that there are children that are under the rubble, and we also know that there are children that have lost their parents. So when there's a sudden onset emergency, often what happens is what we call family separation. That means children may be losing their caregivers, or they may be separated. In the chaos and confusion, they may be separated, and that creates new risks for children because children are reliant on their parents for food, for safety, for education, all these things. So one of the priorities needs to be safety for children. That needs to be the top priority. Shelter is incredibly important, and making sure children are with their families.
As the situation develops, the full scale of the damage may not be clear until the coming days or weeks, as both nations begin the long journey toward recovery.
At the COP29 in Baku, a new chapter in climate finance began with a bold decision to triple the $100 billion climate finance goal, an historic milestone. At the Petersburg Climate Dialogues, the European Commissioner Wopke Hoekstra stressed the lasting importance of the Paris Agreement. He also highlighted the next climate change summit as a crucial opportunity to strengthen communities and advance the net zero transition.
10 years ago, you would almost forget, but it was only 10 years ago that we were witnessing the signing of the Paris Agreement. And that was the big moment which fundamentally shifted our approach to tackle climate change. And despite everything that has happened, Paris, in my view, continues to be more important than ever. It is the foundation on which all our actions are being built. And today we have a clear goal as well, to keep the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees within reach. And as you know, at COP28, we made a landmark decision to begin transitioning away from fossil fuels. And that truly was a game-changing moment in our fight against climate change. And then at COP29, we ushered a new era for climate finance with the historic decision, not easy, but still historic decision, to triple the $100 billion climate finance goal. So that, of course, puts the question on the table, what does COP30 represent? What is the goal we're working towards? COP30 is our chance and our opportunity to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to fully implement the Paris Agreement and building on the successes of COP28 and COP29. And COP30, of course, will very clearly be the moment where we showcase our ambitious nationally determined contributions, our NDCs, which was, of course, also the buzzword throughout this conference. And we've already succeeded in reducing more than a degree of global warming since Paris, but clearly we're late in the game, and even though we have made progress, this is not enough. And that is why it is so important that we keep on this trajectory. I'm convinced that if we manage to succeed, and if we see more rather than less multilateralism, at COP30 we will send a very strong signal to the real economy that the transition to a net zero world is not just possible, but actually it is fully underway.
In French Polynesia, the Tavini Huirotira political party of Maui Nui is set to convene its annual Congress on Saturday. The gathering will serve as a platform to review the party's achievements over the past year and outlining its vision for the future. Key decisions will center on the progress made since the party took office, the upcoming municipal elections next year, and the ongoing debate over the territorial sovereignty. A major highlight of the Congress will be the proposed draft constitution of the Federal Republic of Maui Nui. It is seen as a crucial step in the decolonization process initiated at the United Nations in 2013. The first European Union Central Asia Summit is taking place in Samarkand in Uzbekistan, aiming to boost political and economic cooperation. European leaders, including European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa, have been hosted by Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan are also joining the gathering at the same time. The Samarkand International Climate Forum is taking place, where Costa and von der Leyen will discuss climate change and sustainable development, highlighting Uzbekistan's role as a bridge between Europe and Central Asia. And now joining us from Perth in Australia is Michael Hilliard, defence analyst from the Oxford Society for Central Asian Affairs, to discuss the historic EU Central Asia Summit. Mr. Hilliard, thank you for being with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, thank you.
Mr. Hilliard, for the European Union's diversification of trade exchanges away from Russia and China is key. In this context, how important is Central Asia?
Central Asia can be incredibly important to the European Union on a whole bunch of different fronts. For raw minerals, Central Asia has great access to a lot of these minerals that Europe needs, including a lot of the minerals that have become increasingly volatile to extract in particularly North Africa. They've got a lot of renewable power, a very educated workforce, a very good manufacturing base already built in. Uzbekistan in particular has quite a robust automotive industry, which the Europeans are looking at quite closely. It also allows for better satellite communications, better technology exchange as well. So for the Europeans, this could, getting Central Asia off the ground and using this partnership could actually be quite beneficial and solve a lot of the problems they're having in other sectors of the world.
The EU has already signed 2 declarations with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, respectively, on renewable energy production. Do you expect a wider agreement on critical raw materials to be signed?
It's possible. Obviously, Kyrgyzstan has a good gold mining extraction project they do already. That's already been quite successful with Switzerland. Turkmenistan has one of the largest gas reserves in the world. In fact, there's almost as much gas as Qatar has. So Europe would love to effectively see pipelines connecting Turkmenistan to get access to that gold and help with the gas prices in Europe. And Tajikistan does have some minerals that would be useful to the European market. So yes, it does open up a whole bunch of different opportunities if the summit goes well. So I think if everything goes to task and to plan, we might walk away with some manufacturing and some extraction agreements that will be beneficial to both parties.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Thank you very much. Pakistan's president has Afghanistan, calling a stable Afghanistan vital for both Central Asia and the European Union. Tamim Bahiz reports from Kabul.
Exclusive interview with Euronews, Uzbekistan's President Shavkat Mirziyoyev reaffirmed his country's commitment to Afghanistan, emphasizing that Uzbekistan has never turned away from its neighbor. He stressed that Afghanistan's stability and development rely on constructive engagement with regional partners, particularly Uzbekistan as one of its closest and most significant allies. The president noted that many who once questioned Uzbekistan's approach to Afghanistan now recognize its necessity. He also highlighted the changes under Afghanistan's current leadership, pointing out that stability has improved, allowing resources to be redirected toward key infrastructure projects, including airports, rail networks, and energy and water facilities. A major focus, he said, has been on curbing opium cultivation. According to the United Nations, Afghanistan has witnessed a dramatic 95% reduction in opium production following the Taliban's 2023 ban on drug sale. Additionally, efforts are underway to support rural communities by promoting alternative agriculture, reducing the country's reliance on drug trade. Looking ahead, President Mirziyoyev urged the international community to see Afghanistan as a land of emerging strategic opportunities. He stressed the importance of integrating Afghanistan into global economic processes, particularly through infrastructure development. To achieve this, he said Uzbekistan is ready to collaborate with the European Union and other international partners to drive a positive agenda that supports Afghanistan's recovery and long-term growth. The president also underscored the need for continued investment in education as a crucial aspect of Afghanistan's future. He concluded by stating that ensuring Afghanistan's stability and reconstruction is in the shared interest of both Central Asia and the European Union. This is Tamim Bahiz in Kabul for A News.
In a significant cultural move, the ruling Justice and Development Party in Turkey has taken steps to declare March the 21st as an official public holiday under the name Novruz holiday. The move is set to align Turkey with other Turkic nations and already recognizes this traditional festival as a public holiday.
Turkish ruling Justice and Development Party has initiated efforts to declare March the 21st as an official public holiday in Turkey under the name Novruz holiday. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had previously announced during Novruz celebrations that the government planned to recognize the traditional festival as an official holiday. Now the AK party has begun the necessary legislative steps to implement this decision. According to reports from Cumhuriyet newspaper, the initiative aims to elevate Novruz beyond Turkey, reinforcing its status as a shared cultural celebration among Turkic nations. Currently, countries such as Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan already recognize Novruz as an official public holiday. The move is expected to further integrate Turkey with other Turkic states, promoting the festival as a unifying tradition for the entire region. The legislative process will be overseen by Kursat Zorlu, the AK party's deputy chairman responsible for relations with Turkic states. The legislative and diplomatic groundwork is set to begin soon, paving the way for Turkey to join its neighbors in officially recognizing March the 21st as a national holiday.
Hoş geldin, sefa geldin diyor.
You are watching A News. Stay tuned for more and have a wonderful day.